Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Greg, would you like to lead us off?
Yay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for this states, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Andy, would you like to do the invocation?
I have a 1942 copy of the Song and Service Book for Ship and Field for the Army and the Navy. And the inside cover is Washington's Prayer for the Nation. It goes like this. Almighty God, we make our earnest prayer that thou wilt keep the United States in thy holy protection, that thou wilt incline the hearts of the citizens to cultivate a spirit of subordination and obedience to government, and entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another and for their fellow citizens of the United States at large. And finally, that thou wilt most graciously be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves with that charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, and without an humble imitation of whose example in these things we can never hope to be a happy nation. Grant our supplication, we beseech thee, through Jesus Christ our Lord, written at Newbury, June 8, 1783, and sent to the governors of all the states. Amen.
Thank you, Jeremy. The USSVI Creed, to perpetuate the memory of our shipmates who gave their lives in pursuit of their duties while serving their country, that their dedication, deeds, and supreme sacrifice be a constant source of motivation towards greater accomplishments. We pledge loyalty and patriotism to the United States of America and its Constitution. Please remain standing for the tolling of the boats for July. The USS Grunion, SS-216, lost on 30 July 1942 off Kiscum Island, Aleutians, to unknown causes. 70 men lost. USS S-28, SS-133, lost on 4 July 1944 when she floundered off the Hawaiian Islands. 49 men lost. USS Robalo, SS-273, lost on 26 July 1944 by possible Japanese mine off Palawan. 4 men survived as POWs but were never recovered. 77 men lost. In keeping with the USSVI Creed, let us remain in a mood of reverence and respect while we take a moment to remember those submariners who have received their final orders and are now on serving on Eternal Patrol. The Rocky Mountain Base Eternal Patrol list for July: Garland Wayne Garrett,
Garrett.
7/24/2021. Gerald Kritzker, 7/14/2023. Please be seated. Holland Club, host. I push the button. Okay, for most submariners, a submerged submarine provides a quiet and somewhat tranquil setting, free of many of the distractions present in the everyday surface world. So in keeping with that, we'll take her down for our regular meeting. Clear the bridge. Take her down. Dive. Dive. Okay, last month we had the swearing in of the officers that were voted. And unfortunately, Dan was not available, so we need to do the swearing in for him. How about swear loudly? Yeah. There you go. He's gonna sit here. Yeah, that's mine. Okay, somebody walked out. There it is. You could just stand right there if you like. I state your name.
Dan Ballard,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute the office
that I will faithfully execute the office
to which I have been elected,
to which I have been elected,
and I will, to the best of my ability,
and I will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States,
and serve the best interests of our nation,
and serve the best interests of our nation,
the United States Submarine Veterans Incorporated,
the United States Submarine Veterans Incorporated,
and the U.S. Submarine Force.
the U.S. Submarine Force.
Hey. Okay, so I do believe that you've been here several times before, haven't you? And so we don't, does anybody want to do the roll call? No. I agree with you. Okay. Okay, I put on everybody on the desks a list of all the national officers for the USSVI that talks about what their goals are and what they want, that kind of stuff. And so I have ballots here. All you have to do is fill them out and I'll mail them in. And just remember to vote is your responsibility as far as I'm concerned. Oh, yes. Okay. We do have, that's our speaker today, Robert Willis Croft. It's called 41 for Freedom. Is that the name of it? Okay, and just before we get started, JJ Mackin is trying to set up next month. The Colorado crew is coming out for Navy Week in Colorado Springs. So he's trying to swing to have those portion of the crew members to come up and give us a presentation on our next meeting. Okay, so that's what we got set up for on. And now, Robert, are you ready?
I am ready.
Oops, I'm stepping on it.
Okay, this presentation I'm coming over the speakers, right? Yeah, this presentation is a combination of me jabbering away plus some effects that fit the overall story of 41 for Freedom. And hopefully this thing is working. We got it to the point where it seemed to be working before most of you arrived. During the height of the Cold War, the U.S. had deployed 41 fleet ballistic missile nuclear submarines. At any given time, between 38 and 39 were on a rotational control cycle, spending 8 months a year At sea on submerged patrol. I served on 2 of these stealthy underwater missile platforms, USS John Marshall, SSBN 611 Blue, and the USS von Steuben, SSBN 632 Blue, for a total of 22 submerged months. Turn that down here, I think. Let's try that. And we can pull it down further if we need to. The 41 for Freedom Fleet Ballistic Missile Submarine displaced 7,280 tons surface and 8,250 tons submerged. Its length was 425 feet, beam 33 feet, and draft 32 feet. Its speed was over 20 knots on the surface and over 30 knots submerged. Its complement was 98 crew and 12 officers. It was armed with 16 Polaris or Poseidon missiles and 4 21-inch torpedo tubes. Each sub carried more firepower than all the weapons launched by all sides in World War II, including the nukes. The sub had 6 watertight compartments: bow compartment, control compartment, missile compartment, reactor compartment, auxiliary compartment, and the engine compartment. They're divided up as follows: torpedo room and cruise berthing, sonar, cruise mess, cruise berthing, battery compartment, control room, galley, wardroom and officers' quarters, missile control center, and the missile compartment, the reactor compartment, the auxiliary machinery space, and the engine room. From its commencement in the late 1950s, the FBM program incorporated 6 missiles. This was the initial John Marshall Polaris load. This was the final John Marshall Polaris load. This was the initial von Steuben Polaris load. And this was the final von Steuben Polaris load. C4 is a later Poseidon missile, and D5 is the newer Trident, carried 24 at a time on the giant Trident FBMs of today's nuclear navy, 16,764 tons surface, 18,750 tons submerged, 560 feet long, and 42 feet wide. Holyloch, the original home of the FBM Atlantic Fleet, off Firth of Clyde in Scotland. Holyloch lies off the Firth of Clyde, a small inlet next to Loch Long and Garlock. And for those of you who know Scotland, just beyond Garlock is Loch Lomond, Scotland's largest landlocked freshwater lake. Holyloch is a beautiful, deep, protected cove where FBM submarines could be serviced between patrols. Here you can see the USS Hunley, AS-31, servicing FBMs in the early 1960s. Subs left the Firth of Clyde, headed south to the Straits of Gibraltar, and then into the Med in one of 3 patrol areas. The subs usually spent time in all 3 of these areas during patrol. And alternatively, subs headed north into the Barents Sea, sorry about that, to 1 or 2 patrol areas off the northern Russian coast. Now, for you non-boomer types, let's take a look at the Fleet Ballistic Missile Submarine, and I'm not going to spend too much time. Why? Aren't they convenient? You better have. In the control room, the officer of the deck stands watch on the periscope stand, where, near the surface, he can extend one or both of these scopes, the optical or attack scope and the electronic or navigation scope. Also at the con is a bank of central monitoring and control consoles that gives the officer of the deck, or the captain, of course, a complete picture of what is happening both inside and outside the sub. The sub's depth and direction are controlled by 4 people. The officer of the deck gives orders to the diving officer, who controls 2 plainsmen and the chief of the watch at the ballast control panel. The starboard plainsman also controls the ship's course and speed under direction and control of the officer of the deck. The ballast control panel is controlled by the chief of the watch, and you can see here how incredibly complex it is. You don't stand watch here until you really know the submarine. 2 particularly important alarms are the general alarm that calls the crew to battle stations and to many other emergency type events, and the collision alarm that's just what its name implies, a warning that collision is imminent.
This is the general alarm.
Does that get your blood going?
This is the collision alarm.
That one really gets you going, doesn't it?
Thank goodness I never heard that.
Sonar is the eyes and ears of any submarine. My job as an enlisted man on John Marshall was as a sonar tech. You guys remember Jonesy on the Hunt for Red October?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was me as a young sailor. As technology progresses, more and more of sonar tech's job is being handled by electronics. But the sonar tech's ears still are the final submarine art form.
The submarine is surrounded by 5 whales. The sonar operator trains his listening beam past a ship running on a turbine, and then picks up the rapid screws of the trawler that fade out, then the turbine fades out, and then all you hear is the whales. 5 whales talking to one another. Then the turbine sound. The rapid propeller sound. And the whales. This is active sonar searching. Something the submariner doesn't want to hear, followed by acquisition, which means a torpedo in the water soon. Searching. Acquisition. Torpedo in the water.
The reactor acts just like an old-fashioned steam plant. It produces steam in a primary loop that gives up its heat to the secondary loop that drives the turbines and the electrical generators. The reactor and turbine systems are intimately interconnected, and they're both controlled from this console. When something goes wrong, the reactor emergency alarm sounds. Until the Los Angeles class fast attacks, all modern American submarines were driven by a 7-bladed propeller. It gave the best, most powerful propulsion, but was quieter than anything else. Modern subs use a shrouded propulsor, and there are no public photos of those. It empties into a holding tank. When the tank gets full, the vault valve is closed and tagged, as you can see here. The tank is pressurized and the valve to C is open so that the tank is emptied into the ocean. When the tank must be vented into the sub through a set of filters, and it still stinks to high heaven. Occasionally, a subsailor will have to use the head while the sanitary tank is pressurized, realizing that he must not open. Sometimes he forgets, and whatever he deposited in the bowl blasts all over him and all over there. What a mess. To rid the sub of trash, an 8-inch tube is filled with trash and a couple of iron weights, and the TDU is filled with these cylinders, and then the outer valve is opened, the inner valve is closed, and the outer valve is opened, and they're just dumped to the ocean bottom. The crew needs clean uniforms and underwear. On the John Marshall, I volunteered to do the crew's laundry, which earned me several $100s each patrol. I also learned a great deal about the personal habits of several crew members. As each of you knows only too well, every new crew member must qualify. For an already qualified submariner from another sub, this is a fairly quick task, but for the first-time qualifier, this means learning every valve, switch, and control in every compartment of the submarine. It is a long and arduous task, but absolutely necessary since any crew member could be the one person at exactly the right spot to save the submarine in an emergency. An unqualified puke has but one task: qualify. This chart tracks the progress. Fall behind and you lose all of your private time. The behinder eats, sleeps, stands watch, and qualifies. That's it. Finally, being granted permission to wear the silver dolphins admits the qualifier to the elite membership of qualified submariners. Officers have the same qualification requirements, except they also must learn all the ship handling and control procedures that are part of an officer. The crew's mess is used for eating, training, classes, movies, and anything else where more than a few crew members have to assemble. Crew's berthing is confined and stacked 3 high. Each bunk has a locker underneath the mattress and holds the crew members' personal effects. Sometimes crew members will hot bunk, sharing a bunk where one is on watch while the other sleeps. This becomes a problem when women serve on subs. I understand sleeping compartments have been separated into male and female sections. Time will tell. However, each crew member takes his exercise wherever he can. This guy rides an exercycle in the missile compartment. He's on the starboard side of the sub here. The chief of the boat, the cob, the senior enlisted man on the sub, usually has a wealth of sea stories for the younger crew members. And here's a question for you guys. What's the difference between a fairy tale and a sea story? Well, a fairy tale starts out now, once upon a time, and a sea story starts out. Now on to my personal story. I made 5 patrols as a sonar tech and 4 patrols as an officer. Total underwater time was 22 months. Let's start out with my enlisted service on the USS John Marshall SSPN 611. John Marshall was launched on July 15, 1961, christened by no less than Mrs. Robert F. Kennedy. She was commissioned a year later on May 21, 1962, and just before that, USS Ethan Allen, SSPN 608, launched a live A-1 Polaris missile in the Dominic 9 test series in the Southern Pacific. The diesel sub USS Carbonero SS-337 was monitoring on station and took this photo of the nuclear explosion through her periscope. That's a cool picture. John Marshall accomplished her second patrol while I was completing submarine school in Groton. I arrived in June 1963 as John Marshall was doing a fast cruise alongside before her third patrol. I stepped aboard under the wing of the cob, climbed down the ladder into the control room rigged for red, meaning that only red lights were lit simulating nighttime underway. I was taken to my assigned bunk at the lower level where I left my sea bag. I thought I'd never find my way back. I was awed beyond description. I was assigned as topside watch under a topside petty officer for the first import period. I quickly graduated to petty officer topside. The ship was under siege by the followers of Bertrand Russell, a pacifist group that invented the so-called peace sign. They were attempting to approach the sub in rubber boats, especially at night, in order to attach magnetic limpet mines to the sub. We were issued ammunition and instructed to keep a loaded clip in our weapon, but not to chamber around. On a sunny but cool morning, I was standing topside watch with a newly minted Seaman watchstander when a short, baldy man in civvies left Hunley and crossed the deck of the sub between us and the Hunley. He was accompanied by 2 other men in civvies. The short man started to cross the bow onto our sub when my watchstander held up his hand, ordered them to stop, and requested identification. The short man put his hands on the kid's chest and said, "I'm Admiral Rickover. I don't need to show you my identification." Now, to put things into perspective, Rickover was known for making sudden unannounced appearances to check out one of the subs. Mistakes caused skippers to lose their job. So instead of stepping back, the kid draws his 45, chambers around, and says to Rickover, "This I should do." The admiral stopped and cautioned the kid to be careful with his loaded weapon and ordered me to get my officer to the deck topside. I called him and explained the situation, and he broke a world's record to get topside. He told the kid to let the admiral pass, and the admiral went below to hold a surprise inspection, which the sub passed. He gave the kid a letter of commendation and said if he had let the admiral pass, he would have fired him and the skipper. The Med consists of 3 deep basins with a relatively shallow lip at the Straits of Gibraltar. Atlantic water flows eastward on the surface of the Med, warms up, gets salty and dense, sinks to the bottom in the deep basins, and then this water flows westward along the bottom, up over the lip, and down into the abyssal deep of the Atlantic in a slanted, downward, slide-like underwater waterfall. The water at the Straits is about 600 feet deep, and at the end of the water, 15,000 feet deep, probably the world's largest waterfall. The Soviets stationed trawlers at the Straits with listening devices and tried to keep track of the subs entering and leaving the Med. We would shut down the engines and float the Med on the upper layer and then float out in the lower layer. On this particular date, we had experienced tougher than normal patrol and were in a hurry to go home. We entered the lower layer, adjusted our trim to match the heavy water surrounding us, and set our course and speed to get it home. We passed through the Straits of Gibraltar and suddenly poked through the underwater fall to find ourselves in much lighter water where we were much heavier than the water around us. In less time than it takes to tell, we found ourselves headed toward the bottom, 15,000 feet. I was sitting in sonar, looking directly at the mechanical depth indicator. I watched it. That's the submarine's test act. Fortunately, our executive officer was standing watch as the officer of the deck. He did a partial emergency blow, stopping our descent before we reached crush depth. And I'm here. We made it home without further incident. I earned my Silver Dolphins on August 20, 1964. While serving on the John Marshall, I was selected for a commissioning program called the Navy Enlisted Scientific Education Program, NESEP. Most of you know it by that name. I went to Sonar B School in Key West and then on to prep school in Bainbridge, Maryland, where I and a lot of other NESEPers received a cram course in American history, math, chemistry, physics, and English. Then I went to University of Washington, finishing a 5-year course in 3 years, graduating with degrees in marine and atmospheric physics. Then I attended Officer Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island, and then on to Officer Submarine School in Groton. As the final month approached, I was at the top of my class, but was pulled out a month early to attend the Navy's first Poseidon Weapons Officer School. And this month was all about being comm officer on a sub. My final destination was the USS von Steuben, SSBN 632 Blue. After I left, John Marshall went to the yards to be modified to carry the Polaris A3 missile, the newest thing at that time. And then she got the chance to test fire the missile. Oh, and very well. Come on. Enough of that. John Marshall continued her deterrent patrols, and then John Marshall SSBN 611 was converted to John Marshall SSN 611 and outfitted to conduct special operations, including launching Navy SEALs underwater and other types of special operations. In her new garb, John Marshall completed several more years of service, and you can see back here an area that was set up so that they could launch underwater vehicles and divers and do other cool things. From 1990 to 1991, John Marshall participated in the First Gulf War. Later that year, Marshall was deactivated on November 23, 1991, and put into storage near San Francisco. And 8 months later, was decommissioned on July 22, 1992. As I mentioned earlier, I was selected for DCEP and ended up on the USS von Steuben, SSB 632 Blue. I also mentioned that I was pulled from Officer Submarine School a month early, lifting the entire communications officer section to attend the Navy's first Poseidon weapons officer. When I reported to von Steuben, ready to be AWACS missile, guess what the skipper made? Yeah, comm officer. The one thing I knew very little about. I had to put myself through a crash course, as you can imagine. Von Steuben was launched October 18, 1963, commissioned September 30, 1964, and then in 1968, on August 9, he was underway at about 300 feet, not on the surface like in this photo, but about 40 miles south of the southern coast of Spain. Unbeknownst to her, a tug was towing a scrap hauler named the Sea Lady, carrying 3 cut-up World War II Liberty ships. The tug was DIW, that's dead in the water, and the tow drifted toward the tug, so the tow cable formed a deep catenary. The von Steuben passed directly below the tug and tow, unaware it was there. The cable wedged between the stern planes and hull, forced the hydraulics into full dive position, and von Steuben headed for the bottom about 10,000 feet down. The officer of the deck commenced an emergency blow to the surface. This was fine. Von Steuben surfaced directly underneath the barge. The subsail penetrated the barge bottom, sinking the barge and all 3 Liberty ships. Von Steuben still holds the record for tonnage sunk since 2002. The tug managed to release the tow cable just before it pulled. Von Steuben suffered severe damage to the sail, periscopes, and the missile deck. She limped back to Groton, where she entered the yards for repairs and for conversion to the new Poseidon missile, and that's where I joined von Steuben. I wasn't aboard when this happened. The International Maritime Court found the captain had failed to yield the right-of-way to the Sea Lady and fined him $10,000. The Navy paid his fine and gave him a commendation for saving the tug. The Navy sometimes does things right. Von Steuben received an unusual facelift while undergoing overhaul. Von Steuben's first stop after the yards was participation in the 1970 New York Von Steuben Parade. I was ordered to form a marching unit of sailors, if you can imagine, to head off the parade. I escorted the lovely but cold as ice cornflower queen to the Von Steuben ball. Sorry, I don't remember her name. For 2 days, every Von Steuben sailor who wore his uniform with the Von Steuben patch on his shoulder not came for a drink like that hat, even if he wanted it. Then we went to Rosie Roads, Puerto Rico, and then to Cape Canaveral, where we were guests of honor at the historic Apollo 13 launch on 11 April 1970. That's the one that never made it to the moon. One of the astronauts went to sea with us and was allowed to push the actual launch button for the historic Poseidon launch. Our home port was Charleston, South Carolina, but the tug's departure port was my old stomping ground, Holyoke, off the Firth of Clyde. This time the tender was the USS Canopus, AS-34. Here Von Steuben is receiving a Poseidon missile. Next to her is another boomer, and then here are 2 fast attack. Everybody waiting to get service before they go back out to sea or on patrol. The Von Steuben patrolled the cold northern waters of the Barents Sea off the northern coast of Russia. Each time we left Holy Lock, we met a Soviet trawler in international water, counting the coming and going of boomers. To confuse matters, we would paint a hull number on our sail, past the trawler, and in the fog, paint a different number on the sail, and come back past the trawler again. We and all the other subs would do this 1 or 2 times before actually going out on patrol. It's confused. So SSBN's patrol in the Med with this arc of coverage from the western Barents Sea with this arc of coverage, from the eastern Barents Sea with this arc of coverage, from the northern Pacific with this arc of coverage, and from the Indian Ocean with this arc of coverage. As you can see, the Soviets didn't have a chance. On January 13, 1972, I was awarded my Gold Dolphins. At sea on both John Marshall and the von Steuben, the crew received familygrams from their loved ones. These messages were limited to cryptic notes and, because they were public, had to remain innocuous, like this one. But as a comm officer, I had learned my job by then. I received other uncensored familygrams filled with sexual innuendo. Because I was not in line for command of a nuclear sub, I was a designated missile career path. I volunteered for Vietnam, the only way to get out of subs back then. And in 1973, I left von Steuben to attend language school to learn Vietnamese. The war ended about the time I finished school. I was able to call into CHIPS and was selected for the Navy's deep saturation diving program that led to Operation Ivy Bell. The USS von Steuben went into inactive status and was stored near San Francisco and finally decommissioned on February 26, 1994. It was her final surfacing. Von Steuben was stripped of anything useful and disassembled, and her reactor was stored at the Hanford Nuclear Reservation in eastern Washington state. This is the final resting place for the reactor that propelled John Marshall on her 30-plus years service to our country and our freedom. I was unable to find the location of von Steuben's reactor. They're gone now, part of the past that gave me the right to be a member of this august group of special men. I am happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
You guys were easy on the Russian. When I was on the west, we flew San Juan.
Anything else? Okay. It was my pleasure sharing it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you want to leave this right?
Okay,
let's I'm going to change this up. Let's run through the birthdays real quick so we know who's presenting the cake for us. Birthday for July, we got Jimmy Klein is the 6th. Chris Space is the 7th. Hey, Dave Barrow is the 7th. Mr. Dale, all right, he's the 13th. Bill Anderson is the 24th. He's the one that brought the cake. We also have leftover from the barbecue cake also. Now, next month in August, we have Bill Gregory on the 4th and Grant Day on the 7th. But for those of you that remember, it's actually Robert and Marcia's anniversary in August. And fine. And they will be bringing the cake. Wedding cake and some mention about champagne too. So, with that being said, let's break for coffee and cake. Okay, I think last meeting I talked about The Southern Colorado Great Base down in Springs. They have a total of about 20 members, and they actually bounce between the Springs and Pueblo. They alternate months back and forth. One month they're up in Colorado Springs, the next month they're down at Pueblo. So they're trying really hard to keep their group going. Most of the time they meet in a restaurant. And so when they're holding their meetings, towing their boats, doing the Pledge of Allegiance, they got people walking around. Anyway, and I talked to Brian, for those of you who know Brian Bell, he is the district commander for District 2, the Western District. He was their commander. He's now the person who was the vice commander is now taking over for him. So they have a ceremony, a memorial ceremony, just like we have ours for the Grayling. They do theirs on August 17th. It's going to be at their memorial park. The memorial park is a park that has set up with monuments for the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force. They also have a special area set aside for submariners. And so they go ahead and do their own little ceremony with towing of the boats. And we would like to support them. We're going to kind of try to keep the two bases helping each other out. This August, from the 12th to the 18th, is actually Navy Week down in the Springs. The people who will be down there is actually the crew from USS Colorado. And so I think they're going to be there at the ceremony also. Now, is there anybody that has any desire to go down to attend that ceremony? I would like to attend, and so would Dale. Anybody else is interested? Dave. I know, that's what I was going to get to that. So we've got Robert. You put your. Okay, so I've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 of us. But the issue is that the 17th is also the Littleton Parade. Last year when we had the Littleton Parade, we didn't have much of a turnout. It was pretty dismal, in fact. How many people here would be attending the parade at Littleton if we had that parade? 1, 2, 3, 4. You gotta add me. You got 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So how do we handle this? Do the people? What do you think we ought to do?
What time is the, sometime in Southern Hall?
It starts at 10 o'clock. So there's no way, yeah, it's almost identical as the parade. So how about we would have a kind of a discussion? Who wants to do the parade? Who wants to do the memorial ceremony? Anybody got some words? Yeah, you got.
Oh, either way.
You go either way.
Other than Castle Rocks, Colorado Springs.
Closer for you. You'll take. We'll all muster at your house and head down. Brad, what do you think? You're not making this easy. You're making decisions here. Huh?
Live in Littleton, but I'm on the very south end.
Huh?
We have to have at least a minimum of 6 guys that can move that boat and put it up where it belongs. Okay, so if there's not gonna be a minimum of 6 halfway healthy people, and I'm not talking about Robert and I, it takes 6 people to move that boat, put it up on top. So unless there's gonna be 6 guys there, we might as well not go. And that is until this guy gets to think of put the float up forever.
Yeah, we're designing a lift system to be able to raise the float of the boat so we don't have to pull it from its storage area to its display area.
So there you go. If we do the parade, I'm calling the vote.
Yep.
There
And
we
I'll
go.
be there. Let's see a show of hands. How many think we should do the parade?
I guess we're going to Colorado.
How many want to go down to the Colorado Memorial? Okay, we got a,
So what are you supposed to do? Call motion? I call that we cancel the Littleton.
we never registered. We haven't done that yet. But okay, but he's right. We gotta do our bylaw rules and regulations. We have a motion to not do the parade and support the Colorado Springs for their.
Second.
And we have a second. We have a first and a second. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Keep me in line. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, next meeting is the, what do we say, the 14th? JJ was at the next meeting is on August 14th. I will put out all the information, maps, and everything we need to get ourselves down there. What they do, because the park does not allow barbecuing or something, because I think the Black Forest fires a couple of years ago, we've not been running scared on anybody doing barbecues. They don't allow any cooking at their park. So what the base does is they buy a bunch of Kentucky Fried Chicken, buckets of chicken, and then people bring side dishes and stuff like that, and they have a little picnic right afterwards. It says that they have the Sea Cadets from the Colorado Springs also show up, and they get everybody involved, and it ends up being a pretty good time. So that's what we. Okay. Yes.
Point out too that there's an air show down there that same day where Cousin Corny and with the Blue Angels cap it off, but they don't only start till holiday afternoon.
Did they go right over the Memorial Park area, or do you have center with the airport? Okay. So that's another event that's going on at the same time.
Like $50
Oh. Okay. I'd like to make a good announcement. We have a new newsletter editor, Jeff Mosel. Yeah. He took over a couple days ago, got all the information, and we've got some more input for him. If you have anything that you want to be put into the newsletter, let him know. And hopefully we'll have the first one showing up here in about a week or so, right? Okay, also we're still looking for a co-treasurer. The only person that knows where our money is and where it goes and when the account comes in is Grant. And if he was to somehow disappear, we'd be lost. So we need to have a co-treasurer. And anybody interested in being a co-treasurer, come and talk to me afterwards. Okay, Western Roundup. The dates are going to be March 6th through the 9th, 2025. It's going to be on the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. Well, I've looked into it already, and the Queen Mary itself still has rooms that you can rent like a hotel. So all of the rooms that the passengers used to use are now hotel rooms. And the best way to fly in is the John Wayne Airport. They have direct flights from DIA right into John Wayne Airport. It's about 20 miles away from the boat. There's another airport that's about 5 miles away. I think it's just called Long Beach Municipal Airport. But they want like an additional $300 a person to fly in that extra 15 miles, I guess. So I know Tammy and Dale and Julie and myself and probably Jack. What happened to Jack? Rolls, he's usually here, so. You hit the track there, Nick? Okay. Anyway, so what we thought we'd do is set up as many people that are interested, maybe try to get the same flights out rent one car for a few people, several people at a time, and get ourselves over there, spend a couple days before, maybe a day after. Let me know if you're interested as we get closer. Okay, this is the one thing that I needed to talk about that I just found out about an hour or so ago. The American Legion Post cannot support our Saturday meetings. The commander of the base said that they normally rent out the hall during weekends, and they didn't want to lose that revenue. So you can't blame them for that. So the issue is if we find another place to go to have family meetings, does that mean we're going to lose this place? I mean, this is like the most optimal place you can have. Usually it costs you $200-300 a meeting to rent out a hall. And so they do it here for nothing. They just make their money off of the food and drink. So if anybody has any ideas, come and talk to me or think about it. See what we can do. Because I think we really need to shift to a Saturday for most of our people. But
If it's just an issue of driving home when it's dark.
the issue was the driving home when it's dark. During the winter months is when they get the more issues with the snow and stuff like that. And people are getting to the age where some of them can't drive at night. That's why Gene doesn't make it. Sandy and by the way, we just learned that Gene Keller is in the hospital right now. We don't know any details or facts about it, but him and Sandy were supposed to come to the meetings tonight. They're flying. He ended up going to the hospital, so I don't have a connection. Do you have a way of calling him or? I know Bruce Martin is pretty good friends with him, and he can.
Joni's in the hospital too, so.
Joni is?
Joni Gowan, I called her this morning to see if you wanted to ride. She said she's been in the hospital for the last 10 days. And she hopes to get released tomorrow, but it's because of a cardiac problem she has.
Oh, man. Okay, we're gonna have to start paying closer attention to that. Okay, minutes. The minutes were put out by Secretary Dan Ballard in an email. For those of you who should have received it. You got it?
I got it.
You got it. I got it. Is there any corrections to the minutes? No corrections, we'll accept as is. And Grant, treasury report.
No,
No? Yes?
don't know.
Oh. Okay.
Well, they're Robert.
Actually, I do know. So last month, month of June, we had a total of $136 income and total expenses of $323.94 for a net loss of $187.94. That's a typical summer month, as we'll start picking up dues again starting in October meeting. So that keep that in mind for 2025. One thing we did find out, we finally found all of the donations that were made to our National Memorial Fund. And after paying for the new flagpole that we're putting up at the Grayling Memorial, that is fully paid, and we still have $2,000 in our memorial fund. So we're going to be approaching them. We just found out that the tires on the trailer for our memorial float are 23 years old. And they're still in good shape, except that because they haven't been out in the sun, but 23 years on rubber tires is, So Dale is replacing the bearings. We started getting some squeaks on there, so he's replacing the bearings, and we'll probably in the very near future be replacing the tires on it too. And that's going to be pretty close to finishing up what we call our mobile memorial for the Grayling. So, any questions? If you want to see the full report, I got it here. It's open to anybody. So, there's no questions. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, we do have a new webmaster, Patrick Kraus. His email is pjkraus0404@gmail.com. So if you have any pictures that you'd like to put up on the website, send them to him, and he'll get them in there.
Also, suggestion, if it's kind of bulky or it's too busy or something like that, when you look at it, send them suggestions too.
What you'd like to see.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, committee reports. Tammy, you got anything to sell us? Remember Holland Club? Yeah, she can embroider your hat with Holland Club on it. It came out pretty good. Dale.
Oh, but you haven't had time to do mine because you're the real.
I thought she had one at the parade for you. Oh, man. Okay, it looked pretty good. And so remember, if you're a Holland Club member and you want your hat embroidered, you could do that. Patrick Krause, we already talked to you about him. If you have any input to him, let him know. He's currently in Minnesota, I believe. He always does the vacation up there. We're still looking for new Caps for Kids chairman. Bingo. Next Wednesday, the 17th, 1000. Let's see a show of hands who'll be able to make it. 1, 2, 3.
$2 bill.
All right. Ray, you gonna be able to make it? Oh, Myra, yes. And I know Patrick always goes, and so does Gene will be there. And Bruce. Bruce is not here tonight. He had other arrangements he had to take care of. So remember, next Wednesday, the 17th at 1000. Okay, parades. So the Esta Park Parade. We had a lot of fun. There was 10 of us, plus the 3 amigos.
13.
There were 13 plus the 3 amigos, right? So Bill Anderson, what was that?
Yeah, we really had it.
People on the floor, we have one empty seat.
7 on each side?
7 and 8.
7 and 8. We had a good time. It was a lot of fun. Most of us were up there the day before. We went to the Estes Park Brewery and had dinner. The next, after the parade, we went ahead and set for lunch. What was the name of that place? Wapiti? Wapiti, which means white rear, right? In Indian, and that's because of the mule, the elk. And it sits right over the top of a river. It's washing through, and we were eating outside. It was really great. We had a good time. The only issue is that the town is torn up tremendously due to road construction. They're changing almost every road down there. And so consequently, the parade didn't go down Main Street. It went off the side by the fairgrounds, and the turnout wasn't but a fraction of what it was last year. But the following year, next year, it'll be going back down Main Street again, so we'll have several hundred people standing around. Okay, the Golden Buffalo Days, July 27th. Basically, how many are familiar with Golden? You know, the Route 58 that goes past Coors. If you're coming into there, you want to get off at the Washington exit, and you want to head east. Whether you're coming south or north, you head east, and you go to 10th Street off of Washington and 10th, and that's where the staging area is going to be. If you follow 10th Street all the way down to the end, it ends in their community, the Golden Community Civic Center. It's got a huge parking lot. I think that's where we can muster for the parade. Once it gets going, it's going to go down Main Street about 5 or 6 or 8 blocks, and then turn down 14th or 15th, something like that, to where the end of the parade. How many people will be able to make that? The parade starts at 10, so we probably need to be there by 9 for the staging. We don't have all the details because the person coordinated taking his sweet time about letting us know what's going on. How many be able to join? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. That'll give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9. Did you go? No, I didn't. Yeah, I can make it. Okay. Okay, I'll be putting out more information and maps for before the parade. The Littleton one, we decided we're going to go to the Memorial. Windsor Days is September 2nd. We're still checking on that, right, Jeff? And the Frederick is September 21st, and we're already set up for that one. That one was a pretty damn good one, too. Okay, Grant, do you have any update on the poles, the flag poles? Still wait.
We're at the mercy of the
Manufacturer.
manufacturer, and they won't give out any dates until they're ready to ship. And Wendy said, I spoke to her this afternoon just before I came down here, and she said that that's the status.
That's the status. Hurry up and wait, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the float, we talked about the bearings needing to be replaced. We're trying to set up something so that we can raise and lower the submarine without requiring 6 guys to do it. Grant has got a scissor lift thing designed. It's going to require a winch, though, a 2,000-pound winch, to be able to move it up and down. Okay, our next social event is our annual picnic, August 3rd. We're going to be in the Ruby Park again at 1100. How many people will be attending? Oh, we got a pretty good turnout. I'll remember it's the one that we've always had where the base provides the burgers and hot dogs and buns and condiments and beer, and you bring the side dishes and the desserts. Again, I'll be putting out information as we get closer. USS Colorado, I think, have we discussed everything already, or is there anything else we need to talk about?
Pretty well. Mention of the Wednesday before cruise, Capitol, something up to Boulder to see the University Memorial Center there, and then I'll come here. And for the rest of the week, I'll be down in Colorado Springs on events that the Navy will schedule for, and we don't know what that is. Also on that Monday night, the Navy League, which my wife is president, is putting on a reception down there where they'll have the head Navy person visiting the Vice Admiral, the Inspector General. So it'll be a reception for him and guests, about 20 sailors. So I don't know if anybody can be able to make it down there for that. Get that firmed up. We'll let it bring on the video.
Okay. Anybody got any questions for JJ? Yes.
Well, I'm a little confused about the Littleton Parade. Is it July 17th or August 17th?
Well, the Littleton Parade, we just voted that we're going to go down and support the Southern Faith on their memorial ceremony instead of the parade.
Okay.
Okay, so the Littleton Parade has been canceled.
It is the 17th.
It is the 17th, and down, yeah, and it'll be the memorial ceremony down in Summerlin Springs. Okay, the working party on the float went pretty well. Last time, remember, we needed some people to do some repairs. We got everything repaired. What we did do is, for those of you that noticed, the diving alarm that we used to have here that came out of a 637 class submarine, we permanently mounted that on the float. We wired it up so it just takes a button to push it, and we have it running by batteries. And you should have seen some of the eyes of those little kids when that thing went off. So they really enjoyed it. We're working on we're checking on possibility of replacing the World War II Diggers flag. Well, we also got the new banners for our QR code. It's going to be mounted to the side of the trailer for our parades and for fairs and stuff like that. If we start next year, we're going to try to attend some of the rodeos and fairs in the local area to try to get our organization out the public eye. Okay, how many are familiar with the Poopy Suit books that are being written? There's like 7 of them or so that are out. They've been out for probably 10, 15 years, something like that. And what they're doing is every month, the authors of those books donate all the proceeds on a month to a certain charity. And starting next month in August, all of their proceeds will go to the USS Tennessee SSBN 734 Memorial that is being built in Tennessee. I forgot the name of the city. I have all the information here. If people are interested. That was my 3rd submarine. I was commissioning crew on that. And so they're doing that. So if you have any thought of ordering a book from them, do it next month. So all the money goes to Tennessee. We discussed at the executive board meeting about the possibility of our base becoming a member of the American Legion Post 161. There's some added support for them. It's going to cost, what did we say, $35 a year or something like that? Folks, membership for $50 a year. Any thoughts? What do we think? A thumbs up? Okay, then we will work towards that endeavor, Mr. Grant. Okay, Grant also came up with this unique device. On the UBC, whenever we have a meeting, we have what's called a hybrid meeting. We have people that are there in person, and we have people there that are on Zoom call. And they have this fancy gadget that sits right in the middle of the room, and it's got a camera on the top that's a 360 swivel. And when it hears somebody talking off to the side, it'll zoom in to that person, and then they'll flash up on the screen. And it's supposed to have, what did you say, a 30 or diameter or radius. We have to figure it out. You know, we're doing some more research on it. And at the same time, what it does is it can be manually operated. It can be automatically operated. And what it does is it will spit out the entire minutes of the meeting afterwards. So it listens to you talk, it types that all out, and bang, we have our minutes for the meeting. And it runs about $4.99 if you buy it at their website. I found it on Amazon for $3.99. Well, that's a pretty good chunk of money.
We probably need to figure out $4.99 for any cable that we need to hook it up to.
Okay. And so I think what we'd have to do is would we have it shine up on this thing, or would we just need it on your computer? You know, when it shows you what it's looking at. Because if somebody starts mumbling over here in the corner, like Chris Case, all of a sudden the machine's going to go zoom right into him while somebody else is talking. And so we need somebody that kind of controls at the same time, right? Okay, yeah, and it can be done remotely. So, but it's going to need for $500 is a good chunk of money. So we were thinking of starting up a meeting recording device fund. If anybody wants to donate, talk to Grant. He can keep the donation going. I was also thinking about 50% of our 50-50. Or do we need that 50-50 for our operating expenses? Mr. Grant.
This probably initially should be separate.
Separate?
Yeah.
Okay. If you'd like to donate, please donate. Contact Mr. Grant.
Can you donate to Zelle? Good.
Okay. Okay, so what he's saying is if you want to donate via Zelle, you can do that by contact.
Mail.
What was that?
I said, check the website.
Oh, we did we? Discussion. People think it's a good idea, bad idea, what? Good idea. Dennis?
I don't think it's required. We have to be 25 to 30 more people at every meeting.
Well, the reason why we record the meetings is because there's people that can't attend, like Jimmy Alfaro. He watches it every single time from Honduras or wherever the heck he is. I don't know. Do you have any idea?
Last time I looked, it's 7 years.
7? So is it worth it for the money?
Great. You got a beer.
Everything breaks.
Yeah. So I kind of think the consensus is that we'll table it for right now. How's that? Okay. So the honor bell, remember we said, oh boy, we're going to have the honor bell at our ceremony. Well, the honor bell was in an accident, 3 weeks ago?
I've got details. It's been in 2 accidents. The first accident, the person driving it, there was a guy on the left that decided to make a right turn and hit the van just in front of the driver's side door. We did some damage, but we were still able to use the bell and everything. They were taking the bell in, from what I heard, to get it repaired. And there was a guy following that was going to take the driver back home. And there was somebody that rear-ended that guy and pushed him into the bell enough that he was knocked unconscious. And it damaged the skids on the bell, so the bell is not able to come out of the van. And the van also has some cracks in the frame. It really did some major damage to the frame of the van. They have two insurance policies, one for the van and one for the bell. And they're waiting on an adjuster to decide if they're gonna total it or not.
So the chances of the memorial bell being there are slim.
Well, if they decide they can repair it, it's possible they could have it repaired by then.
Well, we need to know at least 2 weeks prior to, because we have to create the program and all that.
If we're gonna get it repaired, probably approximately how long it's gonna take. If they total it, I don't know what they're gonna do.
So we may be out of the honor bell. Okay, we have new cards, new business cards. With our QR code on the back of them. These are all the new ones up here on the desk. Come and get yourself some. Make sure you put out your name and your number on it. Possibly email address too, that when you give it out, the people know how to get a hold of you. The biggest issue we have is people you meet, you give them the spiel, you give them the card, and then you never hear from them again. So if at any possibility, try to get a contact information from that person you talked to. Okay, I received an email just yesterday from, it came from National, and it went down about 3 or 4 heads, ended up in Brian Bell, and then he sent it out to the different bases that he keeps an eye on. And what it is there's a gentleman up in Nova Scotia that collects challenge coins. And so he requested from National that if anybody has any challenge coins or they have duplicates, stuff like that, he would really, really appreciate people sending him challenge coins. He's got a picture of him sitting at his kitchen table, and it's a pretty big table, about as big as this. And this is covered with challenge coins from all different organizations in Canada. And he wants to branch out to the United States, and he particularly likes submarines. So if you know of anybody or are interested in sending him something, I have all the information here up on the desk. Has anybody got any more questions for the good of the order? Any comments? It's a guy out of Nova Scotia, Canadian. Well, then let's do the 50-50. Ray can't play. What? Yeah. 8, 7, 8. Oh, man. You must have the one right after him. 8. And late. Oh, we are right. Let us now lead this quiet and tranquil life that we know in the deep and return to the reality of the surface world. Surface. Andy, the degradation.
Let's pray. Thank you, Father, for allowing us to have a good meeting. Help us do our part in carrying out the mission and the tasks and the parades and all the things that go into operating this organization. We pray for those who were not able to be here for health reasons. May your hand of protection be upon them and healing. And take us home safely now. In your holy name, amen.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. No move, second. Second. We're adjourned.